What is up, Royal Family? It's Noble Comics here today. I think it's about time that we do a retrospective on the Tournament of Power. You all voted, we have our winner, we'll talk about that here in a second, and I want to talk about the tournament in general, some key fights that I think swung the thing, things I agree with, disagreed with, and maybe some future tournaments that we can talk about a little later on. So first, the winner of the tournament was, of course, Ultra Ego Vegeta, taking it over Superman in the finals. He had a pretty overwhelming majority of the votes. It wasn't quite as close as I thought it would be. But hey, that's who you guys wanted to win, and that's who won. And if I'm honest, I'm really not surprised. From the beginning, that's kind of who I thought was going to win. There are a few fights here and there I think he realistically could have lost, but you know what? I think it was a pretty good end to the tournament, all things considered. So looking back at some key fights, I'm not going to analyze everything here because a lot of it I think went about the way that I expected, but a few key fights I want to talk about that I think could have swung the tournament one way or another is something I want to discuss here. So the first one was one of the earliest fights was the Doomsday versus Vegeta fight. Now, I'm not surprised Vegeta won, and he won pretty overwhelmingly, especially considering that he had just beaten the Hulk in the previous fight. Hulk and Doomsday are very similar characters. They're often paired up against one another, so the logic that applied to Vegeta winning against Hulk also applies to him winning against Doomsday. I do think Doomsday has some more durability. I think that he does have some extremely high-end feats as well that could have been used to justify him beating Vegeta. But overall, I'm not surprised that he lost. I just do think that that was kind of a key fight, because I said in that fight that if Doomsday can't beat him, who can, right? Who else in this bracket could beat him? And that if he did win, it was pretty much a straight walk to the finals. And that's kind of what we saw. Also, the Hal Jordan versus Broly fight. Broly obviously stomped Hal Jordan. I think that was one of the worst one-sided victories that we had. Even though I was rooting for Hal in the video, I do think that he got disrespected a little bit. I think he would have had a better showing than how it turned out. Though, in the end, Broly winning, again, is not surprising, and that's not unrealistic either. But I do think that that was interesting and maybe could have turned the tournament one way or another. Next was Martian Manhunter versus Thor. Now, Thor won this one, which is very surprising, because this is one of two fights that you all, the voters, were sort of opposite of what I guess the mainstream versus battle community has thought for like the past decade. Because typically, because, you know, obviously these are two very popular characters, this fight's been hashed out online hundreds of times. And typically when it's Martian Manhunter versus Thor, Manhunter wins. It's kind of like accepted that Martian Manhunter would beat Thor. So I was surprised to see him win, one. Two, I'm glad that he won because I'm definitely more of a Thor fan. And I think that set up a more interesting fight of Broly versus Thor. However, if Martian Manhunter had won, I think that there's an argument that he could have beaten Broly and maybe Vegeta, but that's a bit of a stretch. So I don't think that would shake things up too much. I think Thor probably actually has a better chance against Vegeta than Martian Manhunter would, but I am surprised that he lost. Apocalypse versus Shazam. Shazam barely won. I was rooting for Apocalypse, but that's not surprising. Very close fight, though. I think that was the closest one we had so far. But here's the other big fight that you all, the voters, are sort of opposed to. The typical versus battle convention was the Superman versus Silver Surfer fight, where Superman won. And online generally, like Comic Vine versus Battle Wiki, different stuff like that, it's been accepted for like a decade of arguing that Silver Surfer beats Superman due to his energy radiation manipulation abilities. So the setup would be that Silver Surfer could simply drain Superman of his yellow sun radiation, turning him to pretty much a normal human and killing him that way. Which is kind of what I think would happen if they were to fight. So I thought that was interesting that Superman did win that one. I think it kind of was a popularity thing, where Superman's definitely more of a popular character. And people probably know more about him than they do about Silver Surfer. So he wins that one and goes on. But I think that was a huge turning point, maybe the biggest turning point in the entire tournament. If Silver Surfer had won that, I think he beats Mongol for sure. I think he beats Hit. And I think it would be Silver Surfer versus Vegeta. And using the same arguments of why Silver Surfer would beat Superman, I think there's a similar argument for how Silver Surfer would beat Vegeta. And I'm not saying he would win by any means, but I'm saying that there's definitely a strong argument for Silver Surfer winning the whole tournament if he had gotten past that Superman fight, which I thought was kind of a given that he would win. So I thought that was very interesting and definitely skewed the results of the entire bracket. Another big one, I think, was Dr. Doom versus Vegeta. This was, I think, Vegeta's closest fight, surprisingly, because, I mean, he fought some huge hitters like Hulk, Doomsday, Vegeta, Superman, but I think the Dr. Doom fight was the closest. And honestly, I think Dr. Doom was a very strong contender for a tournament winner, not necessarily for his matchups that he had, but just in general, a tournament winner, because he's insanely intelligent, has insane technology, very powerful, and insane magical abilities. And I was really thinking that if he leaned on his magical abilities and intellect, there's a solid argument for him beating Vegeta and then winning the entire tournament, because if he beats Vegeta, he beats Broly, who would be the next up, right? And he definitely beats Superman, especially with his insane magical abilities. So I think that was kind of a turning point too. I think Vegeta had so much hype behind him that he's just steamrolling everybody in front of him. So it's not like I expected Dr. Doom to win, but I think that there's a strong case there that he could have won and could have skewed the entire tournament and potentially won the whole thing. Vegeta versus Broly, it's kind of what I expected as well, Vegeta winning. I don't think Broly would win. However, he did lose by a wider margin than I thought he would, which then, of course, leads us to Vegeta versus Superman, and of course, Vegeta wins that one. Not super surprising. It seemed like this was maybe a bit of a popularity contest as well as just a regular who would win tournament, which is to be expected, right? You can't really get around that. The only exception to that is maybe the Hit versus Shazam fight. Like, is Hit more popular than Shazam? I don't know, maybe. Maybe in my, this community we have here. But that was kind of surprising that he won that one. And really almost beat Superman too. But overall, I thought it went pretty well. I'm satisfied with the results. Like I said, I thought Vegeta would win. I think some of our stronger contenders are Superman, Silver Surfer, Dr. Doom, and probably Broly. And they made it decently far, I guess, as far as they could get given their matchups. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. In hindsight, doing Ultra Ego Vegeta was probably a little bit too much. Maybe doing like Super Saiyan Blue Evolution would have been a bit more fair. But then I think that directly scales to Broly, and Broly would probably beat that. But anyway, I mean, I think that probably would have been more fair if I would have excluded Ultra Ego, because that does also create a little bit of an issue with like anime versus manga feats and stuff like that, which some people pointed out. Overall, with what we did, this is pretty much what I expected. I really liked the community engagement. Thank you guys all for actually voting. I really appreciate your input and everything on all these fights. I think that was a lot of fun. And I definitely want to do another one. So I want to ask you all, and I will have a poll for this as well. For the next Tournament of Power that I want to put together, would you rather see something more small and street level, like Batman, Daredevil, stuff like that? Or would you rather see something kind of in the mid-tier, which would be some characters with maybe some power fluctuation in there? Like Luffy would be there, Naruto, people like Akuma. I think I'd probably throw in like a Pokemon or two. Different stuff where, I don't know, maybe from the island to continent level on the high end. And maybe even going even lower than that. Like, I think Wolverine maybe would make an appearance, though he might be a little bit too low for that. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I'll have a poll. Be sure to vote in that to determine what we do next. And I'll see you in the next one.